independent?
About 1776.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Excellent! Yeah! Give him a hand!
Yeah.
He paid attention!
All right, Jeremiah.
So we became the United States of America. We declared our freedom in 1776, July 4th, 1776, right? Yeah.
There's a mosquito on it.
It's okay, it's just a fly. It's all right. Okay, so this lighthouse was built in 1764.
Wow.
So if it was built in 1764 and we became a nation in 1776, that's what, 12 years older, right? So what does that mean? It was used by one of the 13 colonies. So this lighthouse, although it's been restored a couple times, okay, it's not necessarily the original, what it looked like originally. It's probably very close though. But it is, it's older than the United States of America. The lighthouse itself is 100 feet tall. There's about 90 spiral steps, like a staircase inside of it.
Yeah, we used to go in it.
The ladder's better.
When there were no buildings out here, it was just the lighthouse. There was a man who would live out here. He was the lighthouse keeper. His job was to always make sure that light was lit. Okay, when this lighthouse was built, it was not electric. Right? Electricity, in the whole grand scheme of history, it's relatively new. Right? So what do you think the light was originally? If it wasn't electric, what was it?
A candle.
A candle. Okay, it wasn't just one candle, though. It was a big flame. Right? But you were kind of right. Right? So it was a big flame. And what do you think powered that big flame if it wasn't electric?
Fire.
Fire. Well, fire is a flame. But what fuel do you think it used?
Electricity.
Fuel.
Electricity wasn't invented yet, but later on it became electric. Yep. I heard someone say it. Some good.
Makai,
Huh?
what did you say?
I said oil.
Oil, yeah. That's what they used. Okay. They used different types of oil. They used whale oil. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. They used lard oil. Does anyone know what lard is? No? How many of you eat bacon at home? Maybe your mom makes it for you.
I can't eat bacon. I eat pork.
Okay. Have you ever seen bacon being cooked though, or anything that's got a lot of fat content in it? When it's fried up on the pan, what happens? It kind of gets greasy, right? And the fat becomes
And it
liquefied.
bubbles.
Yeah. So that's lard.
I like
Okay.
lard.
Essentially, lard is animal fat. So it's the liquefied version of that. And he would have to take huge steel buckets of the smelly, thick, disgusting oil in his two hands and carry it from the bottom of the staircase all the way up to the top to keep that flame lit. Why was it so important for the flame to always be burning?
So at night, the sailors will find them.
Right. It was used by sailors to find their way home. Partially right. There's a little bit more to it than that. What's special about lighthouses, okay? What do lighthouses signify? Not just a way home, but what? That there is land, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were to look onto the bay side, okay, if those buildings weren't there in front of us, we would see land on that side. That's a different town, okay? Now imagine, when this lighthouse was built, there were no other buildings out here, okay? If there was a ship out on the ocean and he saw the lights from over on the opposite side of the bay, he would think what? That was the land and that there was no land in between.
Yeah.
So he would sail his ship into New York Harbor and ground on this area. Okay, that means he would get stuck. And I bet those people across the bay in those towns over there were sick and tired of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to come and have to rescue a sinking ship. Tell you about the lighthouse. The lighthouse was used, believe it or not, during the American Revolution. At one point, it was occupied by the British, and we tried to destroy it ourselves to get the British loyalists out. Okay, who are the loyalists?
Because they didn't like the British.
Okay, the majority of us didn't like the British. However, there were loyalists who still were what? Loyal to the British. Okay, so they were over here and they were kind of inhibiting. That means they're stopping us from declaring our independence. So at one point, it was in thoughts that it would be destroyed. Luckily, we won, so it didn't need to be destroyed. And we eventually, took back control of it. So the lighthouse keeper out here, so So the lighthouse keeper out here had a lonely life. He was the only person who lived out here. What does that mean? He has to be self-sufficient. What does self-sufficient mean?
So he had to do all this stuff
Yeah,
by himself.
by himself. That's right. Okay, so he had farms out here. Okay, there's a building behind the lighthouse with the red tiles on the roof. That was a farmhouse. So he had animals out here, chickens, cows, anything he needed. Yeah. Or to use, you know, anything that he needed that he didn't have out here, he would have to take a boat and row across the bay. Boats weren't electric back then, okay? He had to take his 2 hands and row. Right, what would probably now just take a couple minutes to get across the bay in an electric motorized boat, back then it'd probably take hours. And he had to be here to make sure that light was lit. He would have to climb the staircase 6 to 8 times a day to refuel it. Right? The lighthouse would take up to 8 hours a day to clean. You had to keep it clean. If you didn't clean it, it would stink from all that oil. Imagine if he spilled it on himself, so he had to be extra, extra careful.
You look like a field trip.
So this building behind us, this white building right here, is the lighthouse keeper's quarters, and that was built about 100 years after the lighthouse. So this is relatively new in comparison to the lighthouse.
The lighthouse you wasn't really here.
Okay, so the brown that you see is actually just from being old, and it's just been tarnished by weather and stuff like that. They do take good care of it, the park system does, right? Because what did I say before? It's a national park. So the government takes care of the property. Okay, the park rangers here take care of the property. Yeah, in the back. Question? Do you have a question? Do you have a question?
Is the animal still there?
No. There's no more animals in the farmhouse. That's a good question, though. You can go inside. I think they have a little video that you could watch if you were to come back here. It'll basically tell you the same things I'm telling you now. Go ahead.
We can go.
Does anybody live here? No, not anymore. When it was being used, yes. Now there's a little bit of a museum inside. Again, if you were to come back here, you could go inside both buildings and take a look around. Go ahead.
What's that rock? Maybe all the cars.
What are all the cars?
I mean, like, what's inside them? Like inside the building.
Okay, so some of these buildings have different companies. One is called the Sea Grant. There's the high school that I mentioned, okay? So there are a couple different companies out here. And they just happen, like Brookdale used to have a building out here too, but we didn't renew the lease, so we don't have the Brookdale building anymore. I heard another question. You had a question, right? Or no, you asked it, you had the question.
What? Oh, we were driving over there. I seen a rocket. What's a rocket?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so remember what I said about this property was used by the military, right? Okay, so that rocket, that cannon, was used at one point, okay? Now it's not live. Okay, if you were to walk over there, we'll go over there across this little street after the battery tour. I'll show that to you, but those are old ammunitions. Also not live now. Live ammunition means it would be able to explode. Those can't, okay? This building with the double door garage, any guesses as to what that was used for when this was occupied by the military?
But it wasn't used for firemen?
Yeah, that's the fire department right there. That's right, that is absolutely
It does look like the firemen.
Oh, right, that's right. Yeah, they were,
You thought they
that's right. I know, I was so impressed. I was like, no,
that? That's because it was open when we got here last time.
Okay, so across the field, do you see those 2 buildings past the trees? Those are the officers' homes, okay? If you were an important young man in the military
Or women.
Why is there
Oh, no,
Not
women
back
back then.
Why is there so many few houses? No women?
because the houses were only used by the officers, okay? The high-ranking officials in the army and the military. And only if they had families, okay? So they lived in those houses with their families. The other people in the army and the military, right, they had to bunk with one another, right? Who here shares a room with a sibling? Anyone? Anyone? A couple of you. That's hard, right?
Yeah, that's me and my brother share.
Yeah, so imagine sharing a room with 90 other people. Those buildings over here, right here, next to the fire department are the barracks, and that's where the rest of the people would live. Those who were not important in the army. Okay. On the property, you can't see it now, but there was a church too, and that was for anyone who was religious to go and practice and pray. Does anybody have any questions about the lighthouse that I haven't answered yet?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just saw a blinking light up there.
Alright, so yeah, the light is always on. It's hard to see now, so it's hazy. But if we go out to North Beach and you look backwards towards the lighthouse, you'll be able to see the light. The light itself, the lens that they have up there now is the original Fresnel lens that they put in when it became electric. Okay, our light up at the top of the lighthouse is steady. It doesn't blink. Some lighthouses blink. Ours doesn't blink, so it's a continuous light, and you can see that light 19 miles out to sea.
So there's different kinds of lighthouses?
Yep. And the different types of lighthouses kind of signify what area you're in. Sailors know lighthouses for their light, more so than the shape. Now across the bay is called Twin Lights Lighthouse, and that's, twin lights. What do you think of? 2 lights, right? So there's 2 lighthouses over there. One is a steady light and one is a blinking light. So that's the difference between these 2. This one is a steady light, and the one across the bay is one steady and one blinking. Go ahead. Do you have a question? No?
So, look!
Oh yeah, you can kind of see it if you back up enough. Yep.
Yes, when we were walking, I saw, I see it. It said this was established on 1883.
Yep. So it's just about 100 years after the lighthouse was built. Go ahead.
Are the lighthouse, like the twin lighthouse, the same?
Does that lighthouse look the same as itself or as this one?
As the sun?
Yeah, they're built, both lighthouses, one's over here and one's over here, and then they have a building that connects them in the center. So they're kind of connected. It's pretty cool.
Your class is playing.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else have questions? Do I see any more questions about the lighthouse?
Look at my face.
How did they build a lighthouse? That's a good question. Probably with bricks and cement or whatever the equivalent of was at the time. Lots of manpower. It probably took a very long time to get it that tall. So you'll notice, right, the lighthouse where it is, it's not very close to the water, is it?
How did they get the ladder to put on the lighthouse?
They just built it. Everything was, unique and built for specific purposes. Look at the water. Look how far away it is. Okay, the little areas that you can see it through the building.
Yeah, I can see a little light blue.
Okay, so when the lighthouse was originally built, it was a lot closer to the water. In fact, it was basically right on top of the water. So what do you think happened over time? The lighthouse doesn't float itself. But what do you think happened? Why is the water so far away now if the lighthouse was originally built right next to it?
They moved it. Oh!
I saw your hand first. Go ahead.
I know. They switched the land.
Okay, so maybe they moved it. That's a
Or
good
maybe
guess.
they built another one.
Or maybe they built a new one.
So, if a boat is over there and it's nighttime, the lighthouse can have more light to see.
Look at Jalen.
The lighthouse is right here.
That's not even the question she asked you.
Okay, all great guesses. Actually, what happened was nature. Nature happened. Okay? It's called littoral drift. How many of you have gone swimming in the ocean before?
What? You?
Okay, some of you.
I'm a pro, man.
Did you notice when you went swimming in the ocean that you started in one place and ended up further down the beach?
Yeah.
That's littoral drift, okay? That's the tides moving you. So with the land, it would pick up sand, and it still does. It's always growing, always evolving. The tide will pick up sand from one point, point A, and drop it at point B, and it builds up over time. So now that's why it's so far from the water.
I know how they get sand to the beach.
How do they get sand to the beach?
They move it from another place.
If they need to, yeah, like especially after the hurricane, they had to do a lot of replenishing. That meant that they had to take sand from other places and bring it here. Or all along the shore, they had to get sand from elsewhere and bring it here. But over time, nature will change the layout, okay? It'll build up and it'll take away from other spots.
Like when I was like in the beach, like when we was walking, I felt like I was heavy. Like when the water was moving with me, and I got out the water, I was heavy.
Well, yeah, it's because your clothes were so wet. Anybody else have any other questions before we move over to the battery?
No.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna move